Chosen one. Something deep within you has been awakening. A quiet certainty that you were never meant to fit comfortably into the patterns of this world. You may not have been able to put it into words, but your soul has recognized a truth long before your mind could understand it. This is not uncertainty. It is the moment your spirit begins to remember who you truly are. You did not arrive at these words by chance. Heaven has already appointed this encounter. Every hidden burden you have carried, every silent battle, every unanswered question has been seen. What has been growing inside you is not wishful thinking or emotion. It is the awakening of a purpose that has always existed within you, placed there by God long before your journey began. There is something sacred woven into your life that no human being could teach or create. It was never earned through effort or shaped by circumstances. It was entrusted to you from the beginning, carefully prepared for the moment when your heart would be ready to receive it. Scripture reminds us in Ecclesiastes 3:1 that there is a season for everything and a time for every purpose under heaven. The season you have been waiting for is no longer hidden in the distance. It is unfolding before you now. But understand this: chosen one. Divine purpose is rarely revealed without first passing through seasons of refinement. The loneliness you have endured, the feeling that few people truly understood you, the quiet longing for something greater than ordinary life, none of these experiences were signs that God had abandoned you. They were shaping you for an assignment that required a different kind of strength. Every challenge was preparing your heart to carry what others could not. What heaven has placed upon your life is uncommon, and anything uncommon must be purified before it can fulfill its purpose. If these words speak to your spirit, remain attentive, because each step of this message has been placed here for a reason. What you are about to understand has the power to completely transform how you interpret your past and embrace your future. Chosen one, pay close attention. The emotions stirring within you are not meaningless, nor are they evidence that you are failing. They are the unmistakable signs that something greater is being revealed through your life. Yes, you have experienced pressure, but it was never designed to destroy you. It was meant to uncover the strength, wisdom, and calling that had been hidden beneath the surface. You have often wondered why your path has been filled with obstacles, why success seemed delayed, what leave away just as you began to enjoy it, and why seasons of peace were interrupted by unexpected trials. There were moments, especially in the silence of the night, when you questioned everything. You wondered whether something was different about you, why your journey seemed so unlike everyone else's, and why living an ordinary life always felt just beyond your reach. Yet what you saw as evidence of weakness was actually the evidence of God's preparation. Every difficult season has been leading you toward the purpose you were always created to fulfill. But hear this now, anointed one. Heaven did not design you for comfort. Heaven marked you for transformation. There is a process that only a few will ever walk through. It is not glamorous. It is not visible. It does not come with applause. It comes through collapse, through pressure, through the stripping away of everything that once made you feel secure, and while others were building identities, you were losing yours. While others were gaining stability, your ground kept shifting beneath you, and you thought it meant you were falling apart. But you were not falling apart. You were being awakened, because the vibration placed on your life, the one heaven marked you with, does not activate in ease. It activates in truth, and truth has a cost. There came a moment, didn't there? A quiet moment, maybe when you were alone. maybe when everything looked fine on the outside. But something inside you whispered, "This isn't real." You looked at your surroundings, your routine, the conversations, the expectations, and something inside you disconnected, not out of rebellion, but out of recognition. You started seeing through things, through the smiles that felt forced, through the success that felt empty, through the constant chasing that never seemed to satisfy anyone, and instead of feeling excited, you felt distant, almost bored in a way you couldn't explain. And that confused you, because you thought something was wrong. You thought maybe you had lost motivation. Maybe you were becoming ungrateful. Maybe you were just tired. But no, chosen one. That was not exhaustion. That was clarity. Because once your spirit touches truth, even for a moment, illusion begins to lose its power. The things that once impressed you no longer hold weight. The noise becomes unbearable. The performance becomes obvious. And suddenly you realize you cannot go back to who you were before you saw it. That is not loss. That is awakening. And here is where the separation begins. You start to crave something deeper. Not comfort. Not validation. Not approval. But truth, even if it costs you relationships, even if it isolates you, even if it forces you to walk through seasons where no one understands what you are becoming. You begin to choose reality over illusion, even when reality hurts. You begin to choose solitude over connection, when connection requires you to shrink. You begin to choose alignment over acceptance, even when acceptance would be easier. And this is the moment many turn back. But you didn't, because something inside you refused to settle again. Something ancient, something steady, something unexplainable kept pulling you forward, even when you didn't know where forward was. That is the mark. That is the omega vibration. And with it comes another shift, one that others cannot see, but you can feel forming inside you. You are no longer just reacting to the world. You are building within it. You start thinking differently, seeing patterns others miss, feeling possibilities others cannot comprehend. You begin to design things in your mind, new ways of living, new ways of relating, new ways of being that don't yet exist in your external reality. And sometimes it frustrates you, because you can feel it so clearly, but you cannot always explain it. You carry ideas that are ahead of your environment. You sense directions that don't match what everyone else is doing. And when you try to express it, people look at you like you are overthinking, or worse, like you are disconnected. But you are not disconnected. You are tuned differently. You are not late. You are early. And that difference creates tension, because the world rewards what it understands. And what you carry is not easily understood. So you adapted. You learned to soften your truth, to explain yourself in ways that would make others comfortable, to hold back certain parts of your thinking, your vision, your depth, just to fit into conversations that never fully reflected who you are. But every time you did that, you felt it, that quiet dimming inside, that subtle disconnection from your own alignment, because you were not meant to translate your soul into something smaller. You were meant to express it fully. And this is where the call becomes direct. Chosen one. Where have you been shrinking to be accepted? Where have you been holding back what you know, just to avoid discomfort? Where have you been editing your truth so others wouldn't feel threatened by your presence? Because every time you do that, You don't just hide from the world. You disconnect from your assignment. You were not marked to blend in. You were marked to ignite. And that ignition carries a consequence you've already experienced. Your presence changes things. You've noticed it, haven't you? You walk into a space and something shifts. Some people are drawn to you immediately without understanding why. Others become distant, uncomfortable, even resistant, and they cannot explain it either. And for a long time you took that personally. You wondered if you were too much, too intense, too different, too hard to understand. But hear this clearly now. It was never about your personality. It was always about your frequency. Because the light you carry does not just illuminate, it exposes. It reveals what others have been avoiding. It brings surface to what has been hidden. It disrupts what has been comfortable. And not everyone is ready for that. Some will feel seen. Others will feel threatened. And neither reaction is your responsibility. You are not here to manage how others respond to your presence. You are here to remain aligned within it, because you are not just encountering resistance outside of you. You are encountering transformation within you. And that transformation is about to go deeper. Chosen one. The shift you are feeling within yourself is not a single moment. It is a continuous unraveling. You thought awakening would feel like arrival, like stability, like finally understanding who you are. But instead, it feels like layers being stripped away again and again. Just when you think you found your footing. That is not failure. That is refinement. There are cycles you have gone through that no one around you could fully see. Seasons where everything you built seemed to dissolve. Relationships that once felt aligned suddenly became distant. Paths that once made sense started to feel heavy. Forced. Almost unbearable to continue. And each time it happened, you questioned yourself. You wondered if you were making the wrong choices. If you were losing direction. If you were the problem. But you were not the problem. You were being cleared, because the truth is, this anointed one. You were never meant to become a fixed identity. You were never meant to hold on to roles, labels, or structures that could not evolve with your spirit. You were meant to become a conduit. And a conduit cannot be blocked by attachment. It cannot be weighed down by what no longer belongs to its flow. So, life began to remove things, not as punishment, but as alignment. You lost connections that once felt essential. You outgrew environments that once defined you. You walked away from versions of yourself that once felt safe, and each time it felt like loss. It felt like something was being taken from you. But in reality, space was being created for what is real to enter, and that process is not gentle. There were moments where you held on longer than you should have, hoping things would stabilize, hoping people would understand, hoping situations would return to what they once were. But, deep down, you already knew. You could feel it in your body, in your thoughts. In the quiet moments when everything slowed down, you knew it was time to release. And releasing is never easy when your heart has been involved. But every time you let go, something shifted inside you. A subtle clarity, a deeper stillness, a stronger sense of alignment that did not depend on anything external. You began to realize that what you were becoming could not be built on what you were leaving behind. And this is the fire that most people turn away from because it demands honesty. It demands courage. It demands that you trust something you cannot fully see. Yet, It asks you to walk forward without guarantees, without confirmation, without applause. But you kept walking because something inside you remembered. Not a memory from your mind, but a recognition from your spirit. A knowing that there is more to your life than what has already happened. A knowing that you are not just moving through time, but that something is moving through you. And this is where your experience begins to change in ways you cannot easily explain. You start noticing patterns, synchronicities that feel too precise to be coincidence. You think of someone, and they reach out. You feel drawn to a place, and suddenly it appears in your reality. You sense something before it happens, and then it unfolds exactly as you felt it. At first, it unsettles you because it challenges everything you were taught about how life works. It doesn't fit into logic. It doesn't follow predictable timelines. It doesn't ask for permission from what is considered normal. But this is not confusion. This is alignment. Because when your inner state begins to match your true path, time itself starts responding differently. You're no longer forcing your way through life. You're no longer chasing outcomes. You're no longer trying to control everything around you. Instead, life begins to meet you. Opportunities appear without effort. Doors open without pressure. People enter your life with a sense of familiarity that feels deeper than explanation. And you begin to understand that what is happening is not random. It is precise. But with that precision comes responsibility, because the more aligned you become, the more sensitive your life becomes to your intentions. You can no longer move from impulse without consequence. You can no longer act from ego without feeling the shift immediately. Even small misalignments begin to echo louder than they used to. And that can feel overwhelming at times, because you realize how much weight your choices carry now. But this is not meant to scare you. It is meant to refine you, because the level you are stepping into does not respond to force. It responds to integrity. It responds to clarity. It responds to the quiet decisions you make when no one is watching. And there is one realization that begins to anchor itself deeper within you as this process continues. You are no longer afraid of losing what is not aligned. There was a time when the thought of losing people, stability, or identity would have shaken you completely. But after everything you have already walked through, after every version of yourself, you have already released something inside. You have shifted. You understand now that loss is not always an ending. Sometimes it is a doorway. You have experienced enough endings to recognize that each one carried a new beginning within it. You've seen how what once felt like destruction later revealed itself as redirection. You have lived through enough transformation to know that what is real cannot be taken from you. And that realization changes the way you live. You stop compromising. You stop numbing yourself to stay comfortable. You stop pretending to fit into spaces that no longer reflect your truth, because you have seen too much. You have felt too much. You have remembered too much. And now you are no longer willing to abandon yourself for the sake of belonging. This is not rebellion. This is embodiment. And as you step deeper into this state, something else becomes clear. Your path is not meant to look like everyone else's. There will be moments of solitude that feel heavier than expected. Moments where you look around and realize that very few people truly understand what you are experiencing. Moments where you question if you are moving too far ahead, too fast, too differently. But you are not being isolated. You are being prepared. Because what you carry cannot be shaped in noise. It cannot be refined in distraction. It cannot be stabilized in environments that constantly pull you away from your center. You are being rooted, so that when the time comes for you to stand fully in who you are, nothing external will be able to shake you. And that time is closer than you think, because the more you release, the more you align, the more you align, the more you stabilize, and the more you stabilize, the more your presence begins to carry something undeniable, something that does not need to be explained, something that does not need to be proven, something that simply is. And that is where your role begins to change, not as someone searching for truth, but as someone embodying it. And what comes next will require you to step into that fully chosen one. There is a moment that does not announce itself loudly, a moment that does not arrive with recognition or validation from the outside world. It comes quietly, almost unnoticed at first. But once it settles within you, everything begins to change. It is the moment you realize that what you carry is not just something you understand, but something you are meant to live through completely. You begin to see that your life is no longer about figuring things out. It is about embodying what has already been revealed to you. The search that once defined you starts to fade. The constant questioning begins to quiet down, and in its place, there is a steady awareness that doesn't need explanation. You are no longer trying to become something. You are becoming it naturally through the way you think, the way you choose, the way you respond to life itself. This is where the shift becomes undeniable. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for the right moment. You stop measuring yourself against timelines that were never meant for you. Instead, you begin to move from something deeper, something more grounded than external approval. You begin to move from truth, and that movement does not always look dramatic. It doesn't require you to be louder or more visible. In fact, it often looks quiet from the outside. It shows up in the decisions you make when no one is watching. It shows up when you choose honesty over comfort, when you walk away from what no longer aligns, when you stand in your own clarity. Even if your voice feels uncertain, these small moments carry more power than you realize, because each time you choose alignment over approval, something shifts in your reality. You may not see it instantly, but something rearranges. Paths begin to adjust. Connections begin to change. Opportunities begin to move toward you in ways that feel almost effortless. And you start to understand that your life is no longer being driven by force. It is being shaped by alignment. And that changes everything. You are no longer here to chase what others are chasing. You are no longer here to follow patterns that never truly resonated with you. You are here to shift something, not through control, not through pressure, but through the consistency of who you are becoming. That is the true nature of what you carry. It is not about convincing people. It is not about proving anything. It is about presence, because your presence alone begins to influence the environment around you without trying, without forcing, without needing recognition. Something in you begins to affect others. You may notice people opening up around you in ways they normally would not. You may notice conversations becoming deeper, more honest, more real when you are present. You may notice that people begin to question their own patterns simply by being near you. That is not coincidence. That is transmission. And it happens whether you are aware of it or not. You are not just speaking when you use words. You are communicating through your energy, through your consistency, through the way you hold yourself in different situations. And people feel that even if they cannot explain it, some will be drawn to it. Others will resist it. But the effect remains the same. And this is where you begin to understand that your life is not separate from your purpose. Your life itself becomes the message. The way you live becomes the example. The way you choose becomes the influence. You are no longer preparing to step into something. You are already in it. And this realization carries a different kind of responsibility, because now every choice matters more. Every time you ignore your truth, you feel it immediately. Every time you move against your alignment, there is a subtle tension that you cannot overlook anymore. Things that you once tolerated become difficult to stay in. Patterns that you once accepted become impossible to continue. You are no longer able to pretend, and that can feel intense, because it means you cannot go back to the version of yourself that was more comfortable in compromise. It means you cannot return to environments that require you to disconnect from who you are. It means you cannot ignore what you already know, and that level of awareness can feel isolating at times. But it is also liberating, because you begin to see that you are not losing freedom, you are gaining it. You are no longer bound by the need to be understood. You are no longer driven by the need to fit in. You are no longer influenced by the constant noise of expectations that never belonged to you in the first place. Instead, you begin to experience a different kind of stability, a stability that does not come from external structure, but from internal alignment. And when you operate from that place, something remarkable begins to happen. Life starts responding differently, not because you are controlling it, but because you're no longer resisting what is true for you. You begin to notice that things align without the same level of effort you used to apply. You begin to see that the right opportunities come at the right time, without you forcing them into existence. You begin to experience connections that feel natural, not strained. And most importantly, you begin to feel a sense of peace that does not depend on circumstances. That peace becomes your foundation, and from that foundation, you begin to build differently. You no longer build from fear. You no longer build from urgency. You no longer build from comparison. You build from clarity. You build from intention. You build from a place that is steady, grounded, and real. And that kind of building lasts because it is not based on what is temporary. It is based on what is aligned. As this continues, you will also begin to notice something else. The space around you becomes quieter, not necessarily in terms of noise, but in terms of influence. The things that once distracted you lose their pull. The need to constantly engage with everything around you begins to fade. And in that quiet, you find something important. You find yourself, not the version shaped by expectations, not the version formed by past experiences, but the version that has been present all along, waiting for you to recognize it fully. And once you do, you realize something that changes the way you move forward. You are not here to become more. You are here to be what you already are. And that realization is what prepares you for what comes next, because the deeper you step into that truth, the more your presence begins to carry something that cannot be ignored, something that will not only change your life, but will begin to change the lives of those who encounter you. Chosen one, as you continue walking in this awareness, something begins to separate within you, not from people in a physical sense, but from the patterns, the expectations, and the noise that once shaped your decisions. You begin to notice how much of your life was influenced by things that were never truly aligned with your spirit. You see how often you adjusted yourself to maintain peace, how often you accepted what felt wrong just to avoid discomfort, how often you allowed external voices to override what you already knew within. And now, that is no longer possible. There is a sensitivity growing inside you that does not allow you to ignore misalignment anymore. What once felt tolerable now feels heavy. Conversations that used to feel normal now feel shallow. Environments that once felt familiar now feel restrictive. It is not because the world has changed overnight. It is because you have. And this change brings both clarity and challenge, because while your awareness expands, your tolerance decreases. You begin to see things for what they are, not for what they appear to be. You recognize when energy is not aligned. You feel when intentions are not pure. You sense when something is being forced instead of flowing naturally. And even if everything looks acceptable on the surface, something within you knows when it is not right. That knowing becomes your guide. But following it requires discipline. Not the kind of discipline built on rigid rules or external expectations, but a deeper kind. A commitment to remain aligned even when it is inconvenient. A willingness to choose truth even when it isolates you. A decision to stay rooted in your clarity even when others question it. Because there will be moments where the world will not reflect what you know. There will be seasons when you find yourself standing firmly in a truth that no one else seems able to recognize. Your direction may appear uncertain to those watching from a distance. The decisions you make may seem unusual. Your quietness may be mistaken for withdrawal, and your intentions may be misunderstood by people who only see the surface. In those moments, the greatest challenge is not what others think it is, what happens within your own heart. Will you remain faithful to what God has revealed, even when no one else confirms it? Will you continue to trust the conviction placed inside you without depending on the approval of those around you? Can you keep walking forward when your surroundings give no evidence of what heaven has spoken over your life? This is the place where many begin to question themselves. Human nature longs for visible proof. It feels easier to believe when the evidence can be seen, easier to move when others agree, easier to remain confident when the path receives recognition. Yet your calling was never built upon those foundations. You were created to be led by something far greater than appearances. The quiet confidence growing inside you is becoming your true source of direction. Every moment you remain aligned with your purpose strengthens the foundation beneath your feet, making you less dependent on circumstances and more anchored in the truth placed within your spirit. As that inner foundation grows stronger, you begin to understand that lasting stability does not come from the world around you. It is not built upon changing opinions, favorable situation, or the approval of people. Instead, it rises from the unwavering assurance that your life is being guided by a purpose greater than anything you can currently see. You no longer need recognition to know who you are. You no longer depend on applause to remain confident. Your sense of security is no longer attached to immediate results or visible success. Instead, it flows from a quiet certainty that what God has established within you cannot be shaken by temporary circumstances. When this transformation takes place, your entire perspective begins to change. You stop measuring your worth by comparison. You stop allowing delays to define your identity. The things that once unsettled you lose their power because your confidence is no longer rooted in what happens around you. You stop chasing opportunities out of fear that they might disappear. Not because your dreams have become smaller, but because you recognize that what has been prepared for you will arrive at the appointed time. You stop exhausting yourself, trying to convince others of your value. Not because you have less to offer, but because you finally understand that your worth has never depended on someone else's approval. You stop seeking approval, not because you do not care, but because you recognize that approval is not the foundation of truth. And in that space, you begin to operate differently. You move with intention instead of urgency. You speak with clarity instead of over-explaining. You act with precision instead of reacting impulsively. You begin to understand when to step forward and when to step back, when to engage, and when to remain silent. And that level of awareness is not always understood by others. Some will interpret your silence as distance. Some will see your boundaries as resistance. Some will misunderstand your stillness as lack of action. But what they do not see is the depth of what is happening within you. You are no longer reacting to life. You are responding from alignment. And that response carries a different kind of power. It does not need to be loud. It does not need to be visible. It does not need to be explained. It simply exists. And because it exists, it influences everything around it. This is the unseen strength you are stepping into. It is not about control. It is not about dominance. It is not about being above anyone. It is about being rooted so deeply in your truth that nothing outside of you can easily shift you away from it. And when you reach that level of stability, something remarkable happens. You begin to hold space for others without losing yourself. You begin to understand people without absorbing their energy. You begin to support without sacrificing your alignment. You begin to see where others are in their process without needing them to be where you are. And that creates a different kind of connection, one that is not based on dependency, but on resonance. You no longer feel the need to convince anyone. You no longer feel responsible for changing others. You no longer carry the weight of trying to make people understand you. Instead, you allow your presence to speak for itself. And those who are aligned will recognize it, not through explanation, but through feeling. You may notice this in subtle ways. A conversation that feels instantly deeper than expected, a connection that forms without effort, a moment where someone looks at you and something unspoken is understood. These are not random occurrences. They are reflections of alignment. They are reminders that while your path may feel solitary at times, you are not alone in what you carry. There are others who are walking their own version of this path. Others who have felt the same disconnection, the same questioning, the same shift within themselves. You may not encounter them every day, but when you do, there is recognition, not through words, but through presence, and that recognition matters because it reminds you that what you are experiencing is real. It grounds you in moments where doubt tries to surface. It reinforces the knowing that you are not imagining this transformation. You are living it. And as you continue to move forward, there's something you begin to understand more clearly. Your life is not just about your own experience. It is part of something larger. The way you choose to live, the way you choose to align, the way you choose to show up in your own truth. It does not only affect you, it creates a ripple that extends beyond what you can see. Because when one person lives in alignment, it gives others permission to do the same, not through instruction, but through example. And that is where your role deepens. You are no longer just navigating your own path. You are becoming a reference point for what is possible. Not because you are trying to be, but because you've chosen to remain true to what you carry. And that choice is what prepares you for the next level of what is unfolding, because there comes a moment where alignment is no longer just something you maintain. It becomes something you radiate. Oh, chosen one. There comes a point where everything you have walked through begins to make sense, not in a logical way, but in a deeper knowing that settles into your spirit. You stop asking why it had to happen the way it did, and instead, you begin to see how every moment, every loss, every delay, every shift was shaping you into someone who could carry what you now hold. You begin to recognize that your journey was never random. It was intentional. Even the moments that felt chaotic, even the seasons that felt silent, even the experiences that left you questioning everything, were all part of a larger alignment that you could not see at the time. And now, as you stand where you are, you can feel that something has changed. You're not waiting anymore. Not in the way you used to. Not in the way that felt like uncertainty or lack of direction. This is different. This is a stillness that comes from knowing that what is meant for you is already moving toward you, and that your role is no longer to chase, but to remain aligned. And that alignment begins to reshape your entire life. You notice that your desires are changing. Things that once seemed important begin to lose their significance. The need for attention fades. The need for validation weakens. The need to prove something to others no longer drives your decisions. Instead, there is a quiet focus that guides you, a sense of direction that does not need to be explained. You begin to move from your core, and when you do that, life begins to respond in ways that feel almost effortless. Opportunities appear without you forcing them. People enter your life who reflect where you are, not where you used to be. Situations align in ways that do not require you to compromise your truth. And for the first time, you feel what it means to move without resistance. But this does not mean everything becomes easy. In fact, in many ways, it becomes more precise, because now you can feel immediately when something is not aligned. You can sense when a choice is coming from fear instead of clarity. You can recognize when you are being pulled back into old patterns that no longer serve you. And that awareness requires you to remain present in a way you never had to before. You can no longer ignore yourself. You can no longer move unconsciously. Every decision carries weight, not because it is heavy, but because it matters. And that level of awareness can feel intense at times because it asks you to stay honest, even when it would be easier to avoid the truth. It asks you to stay aligned, even when misalignment would be more comfortable. It asks you to keep choosing yourself, even when that choice creates distance between you and others. But this is where your strength becomes clear, because you are no longer operating from fear of loss. You are operating from clarity of purpose. You understand that what is truly meant for you cannot be disrupted by alignment. You understand that what leaves your life when you are being true to yourself was never meant to remain. And that understanding gives you a different kind of confidence. Not loud, not forced, not dependent on anything external, but steady. A confidence that comes from knowing who you are without needing to explain it. A confidence that remains even when circumstances shift. A confidence that is rooted in something deeper than outcome. And as you continue to move from that place, something begins to happen that changes the way you see everything. You begin to realize that you are not just experiencing life, you are influencing it. Every thought you hold, every intention you set, every action you take begins to shape your reality in a more direct way. You start to see how quickly things respond when you are fully aligned. You begin to understand that your presence is not passive, it is active. You are not just observing the world around you, you are participating in its creation. And that realization brings you back to the truth that has been building throughout your entire journey. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to follow patterns that limit what you can become. You were never meant to wait for permission to step into who you are. You were meant to embody it fully. And now you're at a point where that embodiment is no longer something in the distance. It is something available to you right now, not through effort, not through force, not through becoming something new, but through allowing what is already within you to be expressed without restriction. This is the moment where you stop hiding, not by becoming louder, not by changing who you are, but by removing the hesitation that once held you back, by choosing to stand in your clarity without apology, by allowing your presence to exist fully without editing it to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And when you do that, everything begins to shift again. Not just externally, but internally. You feel a sense of alignment that does not depend on circumstances. You feel a connection to yourself that does not fluctuate based on what is happening around you. You feel a level of peace that remains even when things are uncertain. And from that place, you begin to move with purpose. Not a forced purpose. Not something you have to constantly think about, but something that naturally expresses itself through the way you live, the way you speak, the way you choose, the way you show up in every moment. You become consistent, and that consistency is what carries your influence, because people do not follow words. They feel presence. They respond to what is real, and what you carry is real. Even if it cannot always be explained, even if it does not always fit into what others understand, even if it challenges what has been accepted for a long time. And this is where everything comes together. You are no longer searching for confirmation. You are the confirmation. You are no longer waiting for the shift. You are the shift. You are no longer looking for proof. You are the proof. And the moment you fully accept that without hesitation, without doubt, without holding back, is the moment everything begins to move at a different level. Because when you say yes, not just with your words, but with your entire being, something locks into place. The old patterns fall away. The old limitations lose their hold. The old identity dissolves completely. And what remains is something clear, something grounded, something undeniable. You, not the version shaped by the world, not the version defined by the past, but the version that has been present all along, waiting for you to fully step into it. This is what it means to carry what you carry. This is what it means to be marked the way you have been marked. You are not here by accident. You are not experiencing this by chance. You are here because something within you has already aligned with what is unfolding. Now, only one decision remains before you. Will you keep resisting the truth that has already taken root in your heart? Or will you embrace it without hesitation? Every experience, every challenge, every unexpected turn has been guiding you toward this very moment. The choice you make today will influence every step that follows. Chosen one. This is more than the closing of a message. It is an invitation to recognize what heaven has already known about you from the beginning, long before you could see your own potential. God saw the person you were becoming. What feels unfamiliar to your natural mind has never been unfamiliar to him. You have not wandered off course. You have been unfolding according to divine purpose. Every season that tested your strength, every period of loneliness, every moment when you felt misunderstood or different was preparing your heart for the alignment you now stand within. You were never forgotten, and you were never ignored. While it seemed as though no one noticed your growth, heaven was shaping you in the hidden places. The work that mattered most was taking place beyond human recognition, where only God could see every lesson, every sacrifice, and every quiet act of faithfulness. Now, anointed one, you are entering a season where your identity is becoming unmistakably clear. The uncertainty that once surrounded you is beginning to fade. You are seeing yourself through a different lens, one shaped by purpose instead of fear, by calling instead of confusion. Because of that, your actions are changing. Your confidence is becoming steadier. The way you respond to life reflects a deeper understanding of who you truly are. You are no longer searching for an identity. You are remembering the one that has always belonged to you. So continue forward with courage. Refuse to retreat into fear or allow doubt to silence what God has already confirmed within your spirit. Remain faithful to the direction He has placed before you. Stay attentive to His leading. Remain anchored in His truth. And keep your heart aligned with the purpose He has entrusted to you. If this message has spoken deeply to your spirit, write "I receive" in the comments as a declaration that you are embracing the calling heaven has placed within your life. And if you feel inspired to continue this journey, stay connected so you can receive the messages prepared to strengthen and encourage your path. Chosen one, may wisdom illuminate every decision you make. May peace remain over your heart even when the road is uncertain. And may every door that belongs in your future open according to God's perfect timing, leading you exactly where you were always meant to be.